The discovery of the millennium. I present to you adamantium.
I understood that reference.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full breakdown and Easter egg video for Captain America 4 Brave New World. There's a lot going on in the movie. There were a lot of reshoots, a lot of talk about how they changed the movie, storylines they got rid of, so I'll try to include all that stuff that they cut out of the movie during this video. Because there is a lot of stuff that it was meant to set up that they're just pushing till later in the timeline, like the World War Hulk movie that we've all been asking them to do for the last several years, but they haven't been able to do because of all their problems with Universal in releasing Hulk solo movies. Seriously, Universal, what's wrong with you? Do you hate money? Make that Hulk movie with Marvel. We've all been talking about how Captain America Brave New World feels like more of a sequel to The Incredible Hulk. Like, why didn't you just call it Incredible Hulk 2? Well, that's because of all the legal problems they have with Universal. And even though there was a lot of criticism about the lack of a post-credit scene, there was a post-credit scene that did actually try to, or at least attempt, to set up Avengers Doomsday. So there is a lot to talk about. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Next big movie is going to be the Thunderbolts, and then Fantastic Four after that, and then no more Marvel movies until Avengers Doomsday. Fantastic Four is like the last movie that they have to set up Avengers Doomsday. We will be talking about the entire movie start to finish, so careful for spoilers if you have not seen it yet. Starting at the beginning of the movie, probably one of the most notable things right at the beginning of this movie is very obvious, is this is the first Marvel Studios movie, like we're talking about Marvel proper, not Sony or Fox Marvel Studios movie that doesn't use the opening Marvel fanfare, that special title that you see before all the Marvel movies. They use those same black and white titles that you saw during some of the more recent promos that they released for the movie. They said the reason for doing this, for not using the standard Marvel Studios fanfare, is because they wanted the movie to feel like a darker, paranoid thriller in the style of Winter Soldier. Heading into the Thunderbolts movie, though, I think we will get the traditional Marvel fanfare back, and for Fantastic Four, they'll probably do a 1960s theme version, or at least 1960s theme song version of that. One of the other notable things that happened before the actual movie started playing at the screening I went to for an IMAX version of the movie is that there was a special IMAX-designed Fantastic Four 1960s-looking Marvel intro logo. Like when you go to see a traditional IMAX movie, there's a special IMAX promo that just hypes up the technology. Marvel had made a special version of that just for the Fantastic Four movie, so it sounds like they're really going all out for Fantastic Four later this year when it comes to 1960s period piece design, vibes, everything from that era. It wasn't new footage for the movie, it was just a special IMAX-specific logo, so I think it's just meant to play inside IMAX theaters, not on the web, like they're not going to release it online. Next major change that's very obvious is the movie starts on Thunderbolt Ross right after he's won the recent US election and become president. Harrison Ford, as you can see, was recast as MCU Thunderbolt Ross after William Hurt passed away recently. Black Widow was his last movie. Marvel actually started developing this Captain America movie before he passed away. They were planning on William Hurt being in this role during the movie, turning into Red Hulk. There's a short time jump at the beginning of the movie, and this speech is meant to be the night that he won the US election, so this is meant to be his acceptance speech. The whole theme of togetherness was meant to be his whole campaign, and he was using the Dead Celestial Tiamat from the Eternals movie to basically sell that idea because of all these resources that they can use to make weapons, defense, technology that have been found on the Celestial. So this movie just in general is mostly meant to be a sequel to The Incredible Hulk and the Eternals movie in that sense, and you could also say a sequel to Falcon and Winter Soldier. It plays like a very large, big budget version of a Falcon and Winter Soldier episode just in general. Later we find out that Thunderbolt Ross used the Leader to actually help him win the election because of the Leader's new gamma-infused abilities based on his comic book abilities. There are a couple of changes they make to him from the comics, the way that he looks and the way they visualize his actual gamma powers. The Leader is meant to be the main villain of the movie, but the way they write him, they want you to sympathize with him and why he's doing these things, going after Thunderbolt Ross. But the entire story is very focused on the Leader's mission to take down Thunderbolt Ross. Captain America sort of gets swept up in that, so it's almost more of a Thunderbolt Ross Red Hulk movie than it is a Captain America movie. You could kind of tell that Marvel really wanted to make a Hulk sequel, but for legal reasons, they couldn't actually do that, so they had to put a Hulk story in somebody else's movie, and they just used the new Anthony Mackie Captain America to do that. Tim Blake Nelson returned as his Samuel Stearns character from the Edward Norton Incredible Hulk movie. During that movie, he was already in the process of turning into the leader. The way they explained it after the events of that movie, Thunderbolt Ross put him in a special prison, dosed him with even more gamma to make his abilities even more powerful, and the way they visualize it in the movie is that he can see all possible probabilities. This is the way his brain works, his enhanced brain, sort of like the way that Doctor Strange uses the Time Stone to see the 14 million different possibilities. The leader can do that on a biological level without an Infinity Stone. But he can't actually tell you what the future is. He can only tell you the most likely outcomes based on different actions that people take. So he could say, if you did this one thing, there'd be a 70% chance that this outcome would happen, or a 66% chance if you did something else, and so on and so forth. So that's their way of explaining how he's not too OP, and how he can be wrong sometimes, or get surprised by something unexpected happening, which happens with Anthony Mackie's Captain America. He's able to surprise the leader a couple times. You notice during his speech, because he's campaigning on the whole idea of togetherness, that's why he's also wearing the red and blue tie. If you live outside the United States, America is largely a two-party system in real life. Democrats represented by blue, Republicans represented by red. There are a number of smaller political parties, but none that have gotten close to the size of the major two. Right before he goes on to give his acceptance speech, he takes one of his pills that the leader secretly dosed with gamma as part of his long-running plan to force him to become Red Hulk, and asks his aide if they were able to contact his daughter Betty Ross, which is basically his whole driving force in the movie. The only things that he cares about in this movie are repairing his relationship with his daughter Betty Ross and pulling off this worldwide treaty over the adamantium, which we'll get into in a second. That's like a whole separate storyline. But they reference his daughter, Betty Ross, several times throughout this movie, and then pay that off with a cameo scene at the end, and it is Liv Tyler coming back from the Incredible Hulk movie playing her character again. Way back when they were making Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, they almost had a scene where they had the Bruce Banner version of Hulk turn into Red Hulk while he was snapping the Infinity Gauntlet. That would have been dramatically different from the comics, so I think that's one of the reasons why they chose just to get rid of that part of the movie. Like, they just felt it was too extra. Marvel does that a lot of times with ideas, deleted scenes that don't wind up making it into movies. They'll just save the twists for future movies, like Amadeus Cho in this movie wound up being a deleted scene that they'll probably just bring back at some point in a future film. One of the other most notable visual changes to Thunderbolt Ross, in addition to just Harrison Ford being recast, is that he also has no mustache, but they kind of explain this. During his acceptance speech, they play a montage recap of the events of the Incredible Hulk movie and Thunderbolt Ross's backstory in the MCU, just in general, to catch people up if they haven't seen all those earlier Marvel movies. During that, you actually see them insert Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross to a lot of scenes relevant to those things that happened earlier when he was still a U.S. general before he became the U.S. Secretary during Captain America Civil War. But later in the movie, he says to Anthony Mackie that his aides told him that if he wanted to win the election, he had to lose the mustache. Now, I think given the context or how the leader basically helped him win the election, I think it was actually the leader that probably told him he would be more likely to win if he did shave the mustache, and that's why he shaved it. The way they explain Betty Ross's arc in the movie is that after the events of the Incredible Hulk movie, that basically caused her to hate her father and never contact him again in the past 22 years if you include the 5-year time jump, 17 years in real life since that movie came out. The way they explain Thunderbolt Ross turning into Red Hulk in the movie is all because of the gamma pills that he'd been taking since the events of Captain America Civil War. The way they explain is that he actually went to the leader because he found out that he was dying at some point after the events of the Incredible Hulk movie, which he kind of references during Captain America Civil War, the big heart attack that he had that he told the Avengers about. He went to the leader and had him use his massive intellect to find a way to save his life so that he could repair his relationship with Betty Ross. That's really the only reason why he wanted to stay alive. Otherwise, he'd be dead from natural causes. But by the point that happened, we're talking around Captain America Civil War era in the MCU. A lot of time had passed since the events of the Incredible Hulk. The leader had been developing weapons and technology for him this whole time, with Thunderbolt Ross baiting him with the potential for his freedom if he continued to do that for him. But because Thunderbolt Ross never actually delivered on that promise, when he came along asking him to save his life later around the events of Captain America Civil War, the leader determined that the possibility that Thunderbolt Ross would never give him his freedom no matter what he did for him became way more likely to the point that it was a certainty, that's when he developed his plan to tear him down using the Red Hulk plan in the Gamma pills. The way they explain it later in the movie, Thunderbolt Ross didn't know that his pills contain Gamma and he was slowly being turned into Red Hulk. He just knew that if he didn't take the pills, that he would die. Like the pills were actually keeping him alive. During his acceptance speech, he references Tiamat, the dead celestial in the Indian Ocean, and the vast cosmic resources that were found on it. The different nations of the world fought over trying to claim it as their own, with him now trying to sign the peace treaty, saying the whole world will share in all the resources. And this is how they explain adamantium in the MCU. The obvious big change is that adamantium in the MCU occurs naturally on the Celestial, but in the comics, it was actually an alloy that was accidentally created when scientists were trying to recreate vibranium. There are at least 10 different types of adamantium in the comics, and the purest form of adamantium only exists in very, very small quantities. The majority of it exists in Wolverine's skeleton. He has the majority of it. All other adamantium is slightly weaker than the adamantium in its purest form inside Wolverine. But the way they explain it in the MCU is that adamantium is better, stronger, and more versatile than vibranium is. So it's like even better. They're basically taking the advantage that Wakanda has with their vibranium away from the rest of the world. Now the playing field will be a little bit more even after Secret Wars. But even though it kind of seems like they're only using this adamantium subplot as a red herring to sort of pay off the Eternals movie and set up this whole World War Hulk scenario that the leader is trying to set off, I think that long-term Marvel will use this whole storyline to pay off the version of Weapon X that goes down inside the MCU. Eventually, Kevin Feige will recast a brand new version of Wolverine with a younger actor, and they just want to explain, they just really set him up eventually. But at least for the next couple years through Secret Wars, maybe even like a little bit after that, Hugh Jackman will still be the main version of Wolverine in the MCU. They will make him do this until he's 90, even though at some point you will see a younger Wolverine become the new main Wolverine of the MCU, so he won't have to show up in like every single movie that involves Wolverine and the X-Men. Thunderbolt Ross continues his acceptance speech and references the events of Avengers Infinity War, the Snap, Avengers Endgame, half of all life dying and then coming back all of a sudden. When he says the threats that they face on the Earth show no signs of slowing down, that's also a reference to other big Earth-ending threats from the MCU, other major villains in the future, but mostly it's pointing towards Avengers Doomsday and Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom coming to destroy the world, which they also use the post-credit scene to tease more directly. But the whole point here is that the world has gotten so paranoid from all these Earth-ending threats that they're looking for a savior, they're looking for a solution, and the Celestial with the adamantium presents that solution. They go to a news broadcast which recaps Thunderbolt Ross's problems that he's had in the past when he was still a general in the military, his relationship with Captain America, both versions of Captain America. They show Anthony Mackie's Captain America, but they also reference Chris Evans' Captain America in the events of Captain America Civil War, where he tore the Avengers apart. There are many, many references to that throughout the movie. While they're doing the news broadcast talking about Captain America, they show Sam Wilson's Captain America at his local bar in Washington, D.C. The bartender calls him Cap. They explain this movie takes place a while after Falcon and Winter Soldier, so he's been Captain America for a while. The world knows him as Captain America, like it's very casual. It seems like the bar that he's hanging out in is a military bar because there are a lot of people in uniform there. It's called Abe's, which I think is meant to be a reference to Abraham Lincoln because they are in Washington, D.C. Then we see Thunderbolt Ross with his classic mustache like William Hurt's version of the character when he's still on active duty in the military as a general. This is meant to be relatively recent after the events of Avengers Endgame when everybody got blipped back. They set up the whole idea that he loses his temper a lot, which is meant to be a teaser for what ends up happening with Red Hulk. And the idea is that the leader slowly sort of gaslit him over time, wanting to slowly induce him to this rageful state where he would transform into Red Hulk by the end of the movie. So anytime you see him losing his temper during the movie, the leader was trying to encourage that over time to make it worse and worse and worse. They reference his personal history with Bruce Banner Hulk and show the final fight from the Incredible Hulk movie, like they literally use footage from that movie with the Abomination, his estrangement from Betty Ross. There's a lot of references to her during the movie to pay off her cameo scenes later. This footage from the Incredible Hulk movie is the only time we actually see the Bruce Banner Hulk in this movie. Like this is as close as we get to a Hulk cameo scene. They jump to the leader's secret military facility that Ross has had him stashed in all these years since the events of the Incredible Hulk movie, watching the same broadcast, and this is meant to be the lab that he performed all of his experiments in over those years. They showed the flashing patterns of the lights in his facility here, which the leader uses in the movie to program people's minds Winter Soldier Hydra style. After the titles is a time jump to 5 months later, and Ross is ending his first 100 days in office. We see Anthony Mackie's Captain America on a mission with Torres to recover the adamantium that the Serpent Society stole from Japan. We find out that this was all part of the leader's long-term plan to frame Thunderbolt Ross for the theft to cause a World War Hulk scenario with Japan. Like, we basically wanted to transform into Hulk, destroy Japan's fleet, setting off this giant World War Hulk scenario. So we wound up paying the Serpent Society with funds from the CIA to make it look like only something that the president could have authorized, then leaked that information to the Japanese intelligence. The whole idea that the Japanese were the ones to initially find the raw adamantium is meant to be a reference to the comics too. Kenji Oyama was a Japanese scientist and the first person in the Marvel comics who was able to discover the secret to bonding adamantium to a human skeleton, which is meant to be a big Wolverine origin story Easter egg. Eventually, that knowledge was stolen by the United States and then by the Weapon X program in Canada and used to create Wolverine. When he flies in, he's wearing his white wingsuit from Falcon and Winter Soldier, but they made a minor change to the cowl, and now it's two different pieces. Anthony Mackie said that that was on purpose because it was really hard to work in that cowl, but the original version during Falcon and Winter Soldier was meant to be more comic book accurate to Falcon's version of his Captain America suit. He's using the new call sign Eagle 1 because he's become Captain America, denoting the upgrade in his status. Bird theme because his old call sign used to be Falcon. That's where the Falcon name came from. It was his call sign originally. And just like the comics, Torres sort of moves in to fill the vacuum and become the new version of Falcon to his Captain America. They also explained that Torres' Falcon suit is Sam Wilson's old Falcon suit, which is not vibranium. Also clarifying the reason why he has the two different vibranium wingsuits is they were gifts from Wakanda and Shuri for helping out with Avengers Infinity War. Him doing the superhero landing to take out the Serpent Society here with the sonic boom is a bit of a physics joke, like he's traveling faster than the speed of sound, which is why when he lands, it doesn't really sound like much. The actual shockwave, the sound itself, arrives and then takes them all out. They also use this scene to show you some of the suit's new abilities, and it's also meant to be a comp to the beginning of the Winter Soldier movie where it started with him going after that tanker. There are a lot of parallels to this movie to the way that things went down during the Winter Soldier movie too. They did that on purpose. They really wanted this movie to feel like another Winter Soldier. So the main new ability of the vibranium suit is just like Black Panther's main ability, storing kinetic damage or energy damage and then using that to create blasts. A lot of this is meant to set up the final fight with Red Hulk 2 and all the kinetic damage that he does to his wingsuit to disable him temporarily, but it doesn't last that long because he's super strong. This whole group is meant to be the Serpent Society from the comics, paying off a long-running joke that Kevin Feige started way back when they first announced that they were doing the Winter Soldier movie. You might remember during Marvel Phase 2 when Kevin Feige was unveiling the Winter Soldier movie, he first unveiled it as Captain America, the Serpent Society movie. Originally, they were created in 1985 in Captain America issue number 310. In the comics, they have ties to Hydra and Val, but like they're their own separate group. But they also have the bodies with serpent-like biology and abilities. All of them are named after different types of snakes, too. They said that for the purposes of this movie, because they wanted it to feel very real-world and grounded, they got rid of a lot of their comic book snake-based traits and did them more as a standard mercenary group in the MCU. Led by Giancarlo Esposito's Sidewinder, Seth Voelker, who's meant to be the founder of the Serpent Society. Marvel only added his character in the final round of reshoots. He was one of the last things that they added to the movie. They used him to replace both Seth Rollins and Rosa Salazar's characters who were playing Cobra in Diamondback. Maybe someday we'll see some of that footage, but this is kind of what their deleted scenes were meant to be. It was part of this big fight here instead of Seth Voelker being here. There were a lot of deleted scenes and subplots that got taken out of the movie. The Serpent Society was just one of them. Amadeus Cho was also meant to be a big part of the movie too and get dosed with Gamma, or at least a teaser for him being dosed with Gamma towards the end of the film. That was completely taken out, so who knows what they're going to do with Amadeus Cho in the future if they'll bring that plot point back. There was also a lot more World War Hulk stuff going on in the background, more setup for that, but they said that they felt like there were too many characters in the movie and there were just too much subplot, so it got too confusing for casual audiences, which is why a lot of that probably got taken out. During this fight, he uses a couple moves that we've seen him use before, like his spinning wing attack from Captain America Civil War. He also learned to use the shield in fights during Falcon and Winter Soldier. Bucky basically taught him how to use the shield. This first person he winds up fighting is Copperhead, who says he dreamt of killing a bigger Captain America, a reference to Steve Rogers. There are many references to Steve Rogers in this movie, but unfortunately we never see Old Man Cap, so we have no idea what's going on with him right now. Just a lot of theories. Until they show you a body, Old Man Cap is still alive in the MCU somewhere. When he damages his star on the chest piece, this is why he's meant to choose the newer blue suit later in the movie. His newer blue suit is meant to look kind of like Steve Rogers' most recent Captain America suit, so this is just them creating a reason for him to wear that new suit. Torres winds up yoinking the adamantium, and then they take it back to the White House. Thunderbolt Ross then visits his wife's grave, who they explain died in 1993. Based on the timeline, that would have been long before Bruce Banner had his accident turning him into the Hulk. In the MCU, that would have been in the early 2000s. There was a much larger deleted scene of everyone at a funeral, including Falcon, so I think the idea is that was during a different part of the movie, and because Falcon was there, probably someone important died, or they made you think that someone important died. It could have been a Thunderbolt Ross fake out where they make everybody think that he died, but they just stick him on the raft because he's still Red Hulk. Maybe they'll reveal who this was at some point when they talk more about deleted scenes and subplots. He references Betty Ross again to sort of set up her cameo scene another time. This person who serves as his aide throughout the movie had a number of larger scenes in the film that were also cut with Sabra. Both of them just had more to do in the original version of the movie. He references big changes that he's been trying to go through. I've changed my ways. I'm changing a lot. She won't think that I've changed. All to sort of set up the Red Hulk transformation at the end of the movie where he's trying to change metaphorically from the way he used to be, but he's going to be transforming, changing physically in a very, very big way soon. Torres references Ant-Man. Sam Wilson also references him again at the end of the movie, making me think that maybe there was an Ant-Man cameo in the film at some point. They just reference him so many times. It's weird that they reference him over any other big character. Sam Wilson then takes Torres to train with Isaiah Bradley, which they use for a bunch of jokes to remind you that he still has super soldier powers. Even at his older age, he's still a badass. He probably winds up being one of the MVPs of the movie too, so I definitely think they're going to try and bring Isaiah Bradley back in the future. Maybe Avengers Doomsday, maybe Secret Wars, give him some badass takedowns. They make another reference to Sam Wilson not having the super soldier serum, which they mentioned several times in the movie, and he never does get the serum, and I don't think he ever will get the super soldier serum. They also make a reference to him being a counselor still. It sounds like he still does that when he's not on missions, with Isaiah Bradley just razzing him a bunch. Don't try to be a counselor to me. He references the events of Civil War with what Ross did, tearing the Avengers apart, saying that he hounded him, Steve Rogers, and Natasha Black Widow for years after that, culminating in Avengers Infinity War. When they get invited to the White House, notice on the invitations they refer to the dead Celestial as Celestial Island. And when they actually arrive at the front door of the White House here, it's meant to be one of the first deleted scenes. The leader is seen here in the background in the original version with the camera and the flash. I think what was going on here is in the earlier version, he used the flash from the camera to set up Isaiah Bradley's programming, but in the theatrical version, they just used their phones to do that. Thunderbolt Ross then asks Sam Wilson to form a new Avengers team with him under the control of their government. That's the key, and I think this is also a bit of a teaser for what's happening during the Thunderbolts movie with Val. The whole idea in the present-day MCU, the Avengers disbanded after the events of Avengers Endgame, so even though there are a couple Avengers from that original team, the original 6 that are still surviving, they're all off doing their own thing, and there's no active Avengers team right now operating. There are a couple pockets of former Avengers working together, but that's not Avengers business, like they don't consider themselves an Avengers team. During the Thunderbolts movie, the rumor is that they're going to turn the Thunderbolts that survive into the new Avengers, but it's more like the Dark Avengers, but they'll kind of steal the name, the way that the government did during Falcon and Winter Soldier, taking the name from Sam Wilson, who was supposed to become the new Captain America, and giving it to John Walker. So Val might wind up doing something similar, or somebody from the government will wind up doing something similar, naming the Thunderbolts as the new Avengers before Sam Wilson can roll out his version of the new Avengers. Notice during their conversation, he also references the government's position on enhanced people. I think that's also meant to be a teaser for mutants in X-Men-based characters, which the Marvel producers said recently that they're going to be sprinkling into the MCU before the X-Men reboot movie happens right after Secret Wars, so that people aren't like surprised, whole hog, 0 to 100% X-Men everywhere right after Secret Wars. They didn't say which other movies where we'd see more mutant characters, but my assumption is that Secret Wars will be a whole bunch of legacy Fox Marvel X-Men characters coming back, so that's where you'll see a ton of X-Men showing up right before you see them do a bunch of MCU versions of the characters with recast actors. We also know that Deadpool and Wolverine, Hugh Jackman's version, will come back for Avengers Doomsday 2, so there'll be like a couple mutants that we already know about that are coming back a little bit sooner. Sam Wilson saying that he's getting used to Thunderbolt Ross's new look is also meant to be another reference to the recasting with Harrison Ford. When he grabs the red lollipop, that's also meant to foreshadow Red Hulk. Anytime they show you red or him near red or red lights, all just meant to foreshadow Red Hulk transformation. This person playing the Prime Minister of Japan might look familiar. He was just on Shogun. Great actor. The reason why Japan is such a big subplot in the movie is because of the adamantium being found by them first, and the reference to the comics like I said earlier. When he gives his presentation to everyone on the adamantium, they're trying to sell the treaty by saying that every nation will share equally in its resources. I think this is also meant to be a way for them to explain the MCU, how you see adamantium-based characters in the comics popping up all over the world, just like the comics. Really good example of that is Silver Samurai. When everyone's programming activates and Isaiah Bradley attacks Thunderbolt Ross, notice he has him dead to rights too, but purposefully misses the kill shot. That's because the leader never wanted to actually kill Ross. He wanted things to play out a certain way so that Ross would slowly destroy his own legacy and start a World War Hulk scenario by turning into Red Hulk. You also probably noticed that the song that the leader uses to activate everyone's programming, I'm Blue, is a reference to his code name during the Incredible Hulk movie. When he was in contact with Banner, he called himself Mr. Blue. Banner was Mr. Green. They introduced the Sabra character, who they changed a lot from the comics. Originally, she was just an Israeli mutant character. In the MCU now, she's a former Black Widow who Natasha helped rescue when she destroyed the Red Room in that movie. So she's kind of like a sister to Yelena, for example. That's kind of their relationship. Now she's just working for Thunderbolt Ross as the head of his security, so he basically has a Black Widow as his own personal bodyguard. Not a bad move on his part. She doesn't have any special powers. She's not a mutant in the MCU though, just like a regular Black Widow. They throw Isaiah Bradley back in prison. Remember, he was locked up for over 30 years in isolation, which is why he's so pissed off and desperate not to go back. Ross here hides out in the bunker beneath the White House, which is a real thing, like this exists under the White House in real life. It doesn't look like this, but there is a special bunker. He gives Sam Wilson the business about Steve Rogers, saying that he's no successor to him, like he's a much weaker, inferior version to Steve Rogers, so don't try to be as good as him. When they start investigating the matter, he mentions Winter Soldier's programming from Hydra, talking about Isaiah Bradley's mental programming, also I think meant to set up Winter Soldier's cameo scene later in the movie. Then the leader hires Sidewinder to kill Captain America to prevent him from derailing his plans. He did want him to die. This wasn't a misdirect, but during their fight, they referenced that the leader had other predictions based on different outcomes from the fight. So had he survived, the leader had contingency plans for that. One of them was what went down in the prison where Isaiah Bradley was being held. Leader winds up using the guards at the prison to start killing everybody there to try and get him to turn around and abandon his search for the leader. Back in the bunker, the other world leaders reference the Hulk again, calling Ross the Hulk Hunter, which is another callback to the Incredible Hulk movie. We get a look inside Sam Wilson's temporary base here. It sounds like he's just using this while he's been going out on missions with Torres, and they're either living in or living near these military facilities. Then when they head for the leader's secret military base, I don't know which game Torres is playing on his little flip phone there, but it is a real game. And the reason why they're using flip phones is just for practicality, because they're designed so that they can't be tracked by the government. Leader then contacts Ross and records him confessing to all the shady stuff that he did to him after the events of the Incredible Hulk movie, incriminating himself, which he then later leaks to the national news agencies around the world, Mysterio style. Mysterio would be proud. So now the whole world knows all the shady stuff that Ross did after that movie, and they saw him, like they witnessed him turning into Red Hulk. Notice throughout his lab here too, a lot of the overhead lights are red colored, also meant to foreshadow Red Hulk. When he says it's too late for him now to get his life back, it's because of the way Ross twisted his body with even more doses of gamma to make his abilities more powerful, turning his skin green, mutating his body into this form. Whereas before, he didn't look quite so monstrous, and he looks pretty grisly in this movie. Like, how ugly can we make the leader look? When they show up outside the base, the red on the satellite dish is also meant to be another Red Hulk reference, like they really wanted to foreshadow that turn later in the movie. Inside his lab, they find all the files on people he programmed to do his bidding and the notes on the gamma pills that he was using to turn Ross into Red Hulk. The whole reason why there are these special bars on the door in this thick locked door is because this is meant to be a glorified prison cell that Ross kept Leader locked in for a long time, for many, many years, working on projects for him. The Leader's master's degree certificate is from Grayburn College, which is a place in the comics and the MCU. It was the place that he was working during the Incredible Hulk movie as a professor when he was in contact with Bruce Banner, trying to help him. They also reveal a couple other weapons that the Leader has here too. The sonic weapon, I think, is meant to be a reference back to the Incredible Hulk with the sonic weapon they used against Bruce Banner's Hulk in that movie. He also winds up using that to take down Sam's friend too, so that he can't alert him about Red Hulk. There's another moment here too where Sam is almost injected with something in this needle. I think it's meant to be a sly reference to him getting the super soldier serum, getting some gamma infused blood from the Hulk so that he gets some form of powers, just because there's so many references to him not having powers and wanting powers or thinking he should have taken the serum at some point. All the blood in the fridge behind them here during this fight are meant to be samples of Hulk's gamma-infused blood, which is another callback to the Incredible Hulk movie where he had stores and stores of samples of Hulk's blood that he had sent him over the years. Sabra shows up to help them out. Notice she uses a ton of Black Widow-style moves because she trained with Yelena in the Red Room, former Black Widow. Then we get Giancarlo Esposito's Seth Voelker, still their captive, giving up all the information on Leader and his history with Thunderbolt Ross after the events of the Incredible Hulk in exchange for a lighter sentence in a minimum security prison, which he says he will then promptly escape from and just continue to come back and be a villain in the MCU. That is the last we hear of his character. The reason why he is so thin, like he's barely a character at all, is because he was added so last minute in the reshoots. So they'll probably wait for some future TV show or some movie to bring him back as a bigger character. Notice when they roll up to the dead Celestial in the Indian Ocean, Sabra now wearing upgraded armor. I think this is meant to be her version of the MCU comic suit. Thunderbolt Ross is threatening to start a war with Japan over the adamantium, which would lead to the bigger World War Hulk situation once he transforms, which he's almost successful in doing, like he transforms almost half the way before he calms back down. Part of the idea is that the Leader wanted him to go full Red Hulk during this scene and completely destroy the Japanese fleet, starting that war. There's a great action scene here showing you more of Falcon's new abilities in his vibrating wingsuit, slicing through the fighter wings, riding the missile like a surfboard. Also notice that the missiles are being propelled by what look like Stark Tech Iron Man arc reactors. Maybe that has something to do with what Pepper Potts is doing with the company right now. Who knows? There's a lot of Stark Industries that they peppered into the background of the movies, but haven't really got too deep into. There are a couple longer deleted scenes here too with Sabra and the other aide pulling their guns in this big fight on the deck here. I think it's just part of this larger fight with the Japanese. Torres winds up going down during the fight, where we get a cameo scene from Bucky, who's campaigning as a U.S. congressman now, which he will become by the events of the Thunderbolt movie. That's why you see him in the hearing here with Val. He's on the U.S. Congress. My early theory there is the reason why they're turning him into a politician in the MCU is that eventually they could try to have him run for the presidency during the X-Men era of the MCU way down the road, if he survives to that point. So at some point we could have a President Winter Soldier, which they could use for a number of different things. This is a video mostly about Captain America. We'll save a lot of the theory crafting for X-Men era of MCU for like other big videos. He gives a big pep talk to Sam Wilson. They reference Steve Rogers, all the alien invasions that he stopped. He said he stopped 2, but that's counting Avengers Infinity War and Endgame as one separate event. So technically he's talking about the events of the first Avengers movie with the Chitauri invasion, then Thanos coming during Infinity War and Endgame. Technically it was 2 different versions of Thanos from the timeline, so it was 3 alien invasions that he helped stop. Bucky tells Sam why he doesn't need the super soldier serum and why he's a worthy successor to Steve Rogers and why he's different than Steve Rogers' Captain America, but still just as good as Steve Rogers' Captain America. There are a couple of jokes here with Sabra being horny on main for Bucky, which I think is just meant to be a general joke about how popular Sebastian Stan is with female audiences, which is why they basically gave him his own movie with the Thunderbolts movie. Then the Leader kills Sam's friend before he can warn him about the Red Hulk twist. I think his friend here is meant to be a version of Dennis Dunphy from the comics, who was Demolition Man in the Captain America specific comics. Then we get the first cameo scene from Liv Tyler's Betty Ross in an audio-only phone call to Thunderbolt Ross right before his big transformation into Red Hulk. they reference the cherry blossoms. Again, this is like the second time they've referenced it. There are 3 or 4 different references to the cherry blossoms to set up the big twist at the end of the movie, in them using the idea of the cherry blossoms to calm him down, because it was a really important place to Thunderbolt Ross and Betty when she was younger. The leader then turns himself into the authorities as a contingency to finish his plan to destroy Ross, also releasing all the details to the press, leaking all the information in the audio from their call earlier in the movie, causing him to get so angry that he transforms into Red Hulk for their big final fight with Captain America. He absolutely wrecks most of the White House. He already knows how to thunderclap, maybe because he spent all those years watching Bruce Banner's Hulk trying to take him down and learn his methods. When he almost destroys the Washington Monument, that also feels like a callback to Spider-Man Homecoming, where they almost destroyed it during that movie too. Most of this fight between Red Hulk and Captain America was in all the trailers. It's a very quick fight. Ultimately, Sam Wilson has to talk no jutsu him, sun's getting real low style, because as he admits, there's no way he'd ever beat him in an actual fight. There's no point in actually fighting him. There's also a joke about Bucky when he says that he's full of it and he should have taken the super soldier serum after all, like Bucky's full of crap. After they take Thunderbolt Ross into custody, Sam goes to get Isaiah Bradley out of prison, visits Ross again, who's now being held prisoner on the raft with the leader because he's permanently Red Hulk in the MCU, and he's since resigned as US president. They don't actually explain who the vice president is right now, but he automatically becomes the new president per protocol. These prison uniforms that he and the leader wear are also the same ones that they wore during Captain America Civil War. And part of the irony here is that Sam Wilson used to be the person on the other side of the bars in the cell, with Thunderbolt Ross on the outside having captured him. Then they pay off the Betty Ross cameo scene with Liv Tyler showing up to actually visit and talk to him. Looks great. There's a lot of jokes about her being an elf just because of Lord of the Rings. Maybe someday we'll see a cameo scene with her visiting Bruce Banner Hulk at some point. Who knows? They kind of moved past that because they started the romance with Natasha, and now he has Scar, son of Hulk, with She-Ra from the Planet Hulk storyline. So like Hulk has had many other romances since Betty Ross in the MCU. The world upholds the treaty to share the adamantium, laying the groundwork for Weapon X, the new version of Wolverine, other adamantium-based characters from the comics popping up. Sam goes back to the hospital to visit Isaiah Bradley again, who's now hanging out with them on the regular, just being a casual dude, like being part of the bros. Like I said, my assumption is they'll bring him back and let him do some more badass takedowns, maybe in Doomsday or Avengers Secret Wars, in some upcoming movie. Then visits Torres, who's still recovering, joking about getting a vibranium upgrade for his Falcon wingsuit so that it's like Captain America's wingsuit, then implies Torres is going to get to be on that new Avengers team and that the world needs the Avengers, sort of implying that right after this moment he's going to go about actually setting up that team, go around recruiting people to the new Avengers. There's also a slight Ant-Man reference during this too. Like I said, I think maybe there was an Ant-Man cameo scene at some point early in some version of the movie, and that's just why they reference him above a lot of other characters they could have been referencing here. Then during the post-credit scene, after a bit of a time jump, Sam goes back to the raft to visit the leader, who tells him the world is going to be attacked from the multiverse by other versions of Earth, which is very obviously meant to be an Avengers Doomsday teaser for Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom attacking the MCU, bringing his own alternate team of Avengers that look like the MCU heroes. Like, I think this is how they're bringing Chris Evans back, because they confirmed that he's coming back, but it's not as his MCU version of Steve Rogers, probably one from another universe fighting with Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom team. Then after the end credits, they play that text saying that Captain America will return. They don't say when, obviously Avengers Doomsday, but there's always possible he could have a cameo scene at some point during the Thunderbolts movie, because it's happening in a couple months right after this. I'm not expecting any of them to cameo during the Fantastic Four movie though, just because it's set in an alternate universe. I think they're mostly using the Fantastic Four post-credit scene or some part of the end of the movie to show Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom for the first time, because that is supposed to be the first time we see him in live action, directly setting up the beginning of Avengers Doomsday. That'll also be the last Marvel movie they release before Avengers Doomsday, so like the last opportunity they have to do a good job of setting that up. But there's a ton of stuff happening in the movie, and there are a ton of reshoots. They obviously changed a lot of stuff, so I'm sure we'll find out about more deleted scenes and stuff that they cut out of the movie, like whole characters they just removed whole cloth, like Amadeus Cho. If there's anything you spotted or any questions you have, just write it below in the comments. Marvel also just released a new Daredevil trailer. I'll do a video for that next. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everybody click here for my Captain America Brave New World post-credit scene, and click here for that brand new Daredevil trailer. I'll update the link as soon as I post that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.